This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. This just in, politics are boring again, folks. And I know this because I was watching Pete Buttigieg's Senate confirmation hearing for Transportation Secretary. 1 year ago today, the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed in the US. We'll discuss where we stand with the pandemic exactly 1 year later. Then there's a crucial need for blood donations, but some willing donors have more barriers to giving than others. Why some say these restrictions are based on outdated science. But first, here's what you need to know right now. It's only day 2 of his presidency, and President Joe Biden is taking aggressive measures to fight the coronavirus.
We will get through this. We will defeat this pandemic. And to a nation waiting for action, let me be the clearest on this point. Help is on the way.
The president unveiled his 200-page national strategy for pandemic response on Thursday and signed 10 more executive actions to jumpstart that strategy. The actions include a federal mask mandate, guidelines for reopening schools and businesses, and the use of the Defense Production Act to speed up the manufacturing of the supplies needed to expand testing and administer vaccines. The numbers of new cases of COVID-19 have actually fallen nationwide compared to last week, but still remain at levels that can overwhelm hospital systems. And public health experts warn that a more contagious variant of the coronavirus is likely to trigger another surge in March. That means slowing down the pandemic may come down to just how fast the US can get people vaccinated. The president has promised 100 million vaccinations in his first 100 days, but several states are already reporting shortages, and many Americans who are currently eligible are struggling to get appointments. Despite surging demand, the Centers for Disease Control reports that only about half of the 31 million doses distributed by the federal government have been administered. Only 2 million of those people have received the 2 doses needed for maximum protection. New jobless claims remain stubbornly high. The Labor Department reported about 900,000 people filed for state unemployment benefits last week, and that doesn't include an additional 420,000+ people who filed for pandemic unemployment assistance, which assists workers who wouldn't typically qualify for benefits like the self-employed. The economic pain isn't hurting every part of the workforce equally. While the nation's unemployment rate sits at 6.7%, the Federal Reserve says more than 20% of the lowest paid workers are out of work. With only modest declines since the beginning of January, the road to recovery and job growth won't be an easy one in 2021, especially for those with the least amount of wealth. In the meantime, the federal government reopened its Paycheck Protection Program to help small businesses struggling with the fallout of this pandemic. In its first week, the Small Business Administration has already approved $5 billion worth of loans to 60,000 borrowers. Despite increased vaccine delivery, 4,000 people a day are still dying from COVID, and the US is still struggling to get the spread of the virus under control. To do that, President Biden is spending his first days in office establishing a system to bolster the federal response to this deadly pandemic. Newsy's Amber Strong explains.
With the U.S. passing 400,000 COVID-19 deaths, the Biden team is out with a 200-page, multifaceted plan aimed at stopping the spread, getting kids back in school, and getting vaccines into people's arms.
Our national strategy is comprehensive. It's based on science, not politics. It's based on truth, not denial.
So what's in the plan? First, there's vaccine and testing supplies, fully leveraging the Defense Production Act to prevent potential bottlenecks in vaccine supplies like glass vials and syringes. The Production Act was something the Trump administration used, but relied heavily on companies being willing to help. They also plan to immediately release significant doses of the vaccine to the states and only maintain a small federal reserve, and help the states distribute the vaccines by allowing state and local governments to reimburse vaccine administration expenses through the FEMA Disaster Relief Fund. They'll use stadiums and arenas to host large, federally run vaccination clinics and encourage states to expand vaccine eligibility to people over the age of 65. That's something the Trump administration had already begun doing. Another place of agreement with the last administration, reopening schools. Team Biden hopes to have the majority of schools, kindergarten through 8th grade, open in the next 100 days. That means developing a national strategy from the Departments of Education and Health and Human Services on reopening and expanding testing. Then there's masks. While he can't implement a national mask mandate, masks will be required on all federal property and for all federal employees and contractors, as well as in airports. Another thing that will be different from the last administration?
Good evening, everyone.
Daily press briefings and regular updates from experts. The last public coronavirus task force briefing was 2 months ago.
Now, the problem with President Biden's plan to vaccinate 100 million people in his first 100 days in office is that it relies on people's willingness to get the vaccine. That's something his team says they will address with a multilingual campaign aimed at public education. Amber Strong, Newsy, Northern Virginia.
When you're back, we'll see what's left of Twitter after yesterday's explosion of inauguration-related tweets. It seems all the talk of American democracy and a transfer of power became a little stale, and today Americans wanted to talk about something or somewhere else, like Paris. Paris trended today, a day after President Biden signed an order to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. The move prompted a welcome back response from French President Emmanuel Macron. The Paris Accord is a pact between several countries to prioritize the fight against global warming. Here in the US, some senators were quick to criticize the move, though. Some GOP lawmakers feel the deal unfairly limits American job and economic growth. In a tweet, Ted Cruz said, "Biden is more interested in the views of the citizens of Paris than in the jobs of the citizens of Pittsburgh." The mayor of Pittsburgh felt a bit differently. He previously expressed his support for the Paris Climate Accord during President Trump's term. Also, the agreement got its name because it was agreed upon in Paris back in 2015. Under the agreement, the 200 participating countries set their own voluntary goals for reducing greenhouse gases. And the only binding requirement is that nations have to accurately report on their efforts. So it's kind of like saving the world at your own pace. We know Amazon got the 24-hour delivery down pat. Those vans are everywhere. Now Amazon is offering to use its resources to help President Biden distribute COVID-19 vaccines. It's a tempting offer as Biden promised 100 million doses delivered in his first 100 days in office. But of course, Amazon is hoping to get something out of the deal too. In the same letter, Amazon CEO of global retail business suggested Amazon employees be considered essential to get the vaccine. Amazon has more than 800,000 workers in the US. It's worth noting that distribution is just one problem in figuring out the vaccine delivery system. Staffing issues at hospitals have also slowed down the process of actually getting the vaccine into willing patients. The Biden administration has yet to publicly comment on Amazon's letter, but surely there's a van waiting to deliver that too. Yesterday's inauguration was basically the Met Gala for politicians. All day I was like, come on, Plum Outfit. I see you, Dr. Jill. Come on, Mockingjay. But it wasn't the designer looks that made Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders go viral. Quite the opposite, actually. Would you believe me if I said there's actually a bobblehead in the works? It's not the first time a practically dressed Senator Sanders went viral.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
And with his following, it probably won't be the last. Sanders, who has launched a presidential campaign twice now, gets his strongest political and sartorial support from young voters. When asked about his choice of attire, Bernie told CBS he just wanted to keep warm. I feel that energy because it freaking snowed yesterday. Oh, and if you're wondering how you can get your paws on a pair of those mittens, don't, because you can't. They were handmade by a second grade teacher in Vermont who used repurposed wool sweaters and fleece from recycled plastic bottles. Nah, Senator Sanders gets major points for the exclusive, ethically sourced mittens. Don't at me. President Biden had a pretty full day yesterday, which is typical for most incoming presidents. He took the oath around noon, and a few hours later, he was reversing policies like former President Trump's travel ban affecting mostly Muslim countries. Behind that policy, though, were separated families, some of them split for years. Newsy's Ben Shamiso introduces us to some of those families and how they took in the news.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Hours after taking office, President Joe Biden repealed travel and immigration restrictions for citizens of 13 primarily Muslim and African countries, undoing a signature Trump administration policy and kicking off his promise to restore humanity to our immigration system.
Of course, I am happy
I'm separated for 6 years.
Families long separated partly because of the so-called travel ban cheered the news, though they questioned how quickly it would help them reunite with loved ones.
Last time I saw him in summer 2015.
Iranian immigrant Fatemeh Alamdari hasn't seen her husband in years and has raised her 2 kids alone in the US.
Every day I had to answer them that when he's coming, why he's not coming, what is the reason for travel ban.
Alamdari won the diversity visa lottery for her family in 2014, though she said her husband was left out because of an error in the system. She decided to move the family to the US without her husband and applied to sponsor him as soon as she landed in 2015.
They told me that you are lucky you are Iranian and this will take just 1 year for you. And but it was not lucky.
Half a decade later, her husband's application is still in limbo. It was delayed by President Trump's 2017 restrictions on citizens of Iran and other countries he deemed security threats.
Our uniquely American way.
Alamdari is relieved by President Biden's repeal, but she and immigrant advocates say the executive order alone won't be enough.
We really need to see a concerted effort from the Biden administration to help the immigrants that have been affected by the Muslim ban receive their visas.
As for immigration hardliners, they say repealing the travel bans remove incentives for countries like Syria, Libya, and Nigeria to improve their own security vetting of travelers to the U.S.
I wouldn't necessarily simply trash them on day one because, if they are exploited, it's going to be tragic for the American people.
The Biden administration says it will work on enhancing information sharing with foreign governments and will develop a proposal to remedy the harms caused by the bans on people like Alamdari. Ben Shamiso, Newsy.
One group of men is still barred from donating blood right away, even though the nation's supply is critically low right now. Blood donations are necessary to treat a range of illnesses and can even help with patients who have contracted COVID-19. But there's a shortage in the nation's blood supply. And although it might seem like all blood is welcome, a group of men is still facing barriers to donating because of what some say is outdated science. Newsy's Kat Sandoval explains.
There's a critical need for blood donation because of the pandemic.
And to your left, and you should see it.
But a group of people is left out of the donation pool, gay and bisexual men.
It's incredibly frustrating and frankly, just not even to tone it down, it pisses me off.
We need blood and I'm not allowed to help, wrote Dr. Greg Zahner in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Zahner is gay and works in the front lines fighting COVID-19. Under FDA guidelines, men who have sex with men, or MSM, must abstain from sex for 3 months before giving blood. This restriction still applies to men in monogamous relationships.
I wanted to donate blood and to help because there's a lot of shortage of blood right now. And unfortunately, still with the FDA's rules, I'm not able to do that.
The FDA has changed these rules several times. In the 80s, early in the HIV epidemic, MSM were banned from donating at all to help reduce HIV transmission. In 2015, it was changed to a year of abstinence. And in April 2020, because of the pandemic, the FDA loosened the restrictions to 3 months of abstinence.
You could say, oh, great, that's progress. But I think that just really shows that this could have been enacted long before and that they were only making the change because now suddenly somehow it mattered.
So does science support this restriction? We turn to infectious disease and HIV expert Dr. Anuruddha Hazra from the University of Chicago Medicine.
A lot of these sort of restrictions are very antiquated and no longer really based in science any longer.
According to the CDC, all blood earmarked for transfusions is screened for HIV, regardless of the donor. And advocates say blanket rules based on sexual orientation aren't nearly as useful as more targeted individual assessments.
Sexual orientation is just that, orientation. It does not confer behavior. It does not dictate behavior either. I think individualized risk assessment is really the best way to understand who would potentially be a higher risk donor.
Over 500 medical experts agree, and they have signed an open letter to the FDA calling the 3-month deferment for MSM an outdated, unscientific, historical discrimination. And they are pushing for an individualized risk assessment instead. The FDA tells Newsy it's considering alternatives to time-based deferral and that it's currently conducting a pilot study that looks at this issue, but it doesn't have a timeline of when the study will be completed. So for now, potential donors like Dr. Zahner will have to wait.
The hospital I work at is constantly asking us to donate blood because they're having a hard time getting donors in from the community just because people are scared to leave their homes. When I have a blood type, that makes me a very valuable donor.
For Newsy, I'm Kat Sandoval.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. Let's make it interesting. Tell me who'd perform at your inauguration and why. I'll go first. I'd invite Brittany Howard to sing the national anthem and melt our faces with a guitar solo a la Jimi Hendrix. It's been a year since the CDC first confirmed a case of COVID-19 in the US, and the fight against the virus has been a roller coaster ever since, one that's gone up more than it has come down. Vaccine delivery and distribution is underway, but it's hard to say if we've peaked here in the US, especially considering that the daily death toll is hovering around 4,000 people. Newsy's Meg Hilling took a closer look at where we are in the fight against COVID.
A year after the first confirmed COVID-19 case in the U.S., people are lining up to be vaccinated, some before dawn.
I got here at 2:30 in the morning, and I was number 2 in line.
You do your line, like everywhere you go, you had to do a line, wait for your turn.
The only problem? There aren't enough vaccines to go around.
For lack of supply, we're actually having to cancel appointments. We need more vaccine, and we need it now.
New York City has already had to postpone roughly 23,000 vaccination appointments this week, leaving many people anxious.
I have friends that have had appointments canceled. I have an appointment for next week. I'm horrified.
Well, we desperately need the vaccine so that we could continue to take care of the pandemic that's going on right now.
Across the country, health officials say getting people vaccinated has become tricky because they don't know just how many vaccines will be delivered from one week to the next, a problem some hope will be addressed quickly by President Joe Biden.
I'm just hoping that they find a way, since Biden now is president.
Our plea to the president, give us the vaccines and we'll finish the job.
The Biden administration's plans include having the federal government take the lead, including using the Defense Production Act to speed up vaccine supplies. The president is aiming to distribute 100 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines in his first 100 days in office, a promise that, if fulfilled, will be a welcome sight for millions of Americans still waiting on their turn.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that sooner rather than later we get more access to it.
For Newsy, I'm Meg Hilling.
There's a lot we've missed out on during the pandemic, including concerts, plays, comedy shows, etc. Some events have gone virtual, but let's be honest, in-person gatherings hit different. Since that's out of the question, improv theaters are improvising to find a new way to reach their audiences. National reporter Chloe Nordquist has more.
This space usually sees visitors every day.
Usually in a non-pandemic year, we're busy every single day of the week.
Since mid-March, that hasn't been the case for improv theaters like Dad's Garage in Atlanta.
Until we open up, we are expecting to lose at least $500,000 in revenue, which seems like a big number, and it certainly is, but we have done so much to bring that number down.
Matthew Terrell works at Dad's Garage. He says the team simply had to do what they normally do, improvise, the second their doors closed.
Within days, we literally had launched a new channel on Twitch.
Twitch is an online streaming platform often used by gamers, but it's growing in other areas as well.
Wait, you got that one with the great coasting action? You didn't even tell me you upgraded your ski.
We're learning to be improvisers in a completely new arena, so it's almost like you're learning improv all over again.
With the new solution came new challenges for performers like Whitney Millsap.
Instead of working with the full function of a stage and my spatial awareness, I'm working with how can I play to camera so that I can create drama or whatever.
Because I think that is your true power. What is that vibration?
You can't hear the audience, which is odd.
The performers can't hear the laughter from the audience on the other side. And so things like live chat has been very, very important.
From LOLs to repeating funny lines, this is the new feedback for improv performers, which can actually have some real-time feedback benefits too.
You're in the scene and you can incorporate something they've just said on chat into the scene.
Just up the street, Whole World Improv Theater is also using Twitch on top of outdoor performances. Yet, in what would normally be their high season with sold-out shows,
it's a fraction of what we're used to.
Emily Riley Russell works at Whole World, which was recently renovated to adapt to the times.
We completely remodeled the theater. So we ripped out all of the auditorium seating. We originally sat 123 people, and now we seat 28.
We've got a nice, safe, socially distanced seating arrangement for everybody.
We've been holding so tight and we're holding it down in the budget. The budget is this big. We're gonna keep going as long as we can.
As Americans begin to receive the COVID-19 vaccine, it gives people who run live venues some hope, but maybe not fast enough.
Recently, Dr. Fauci said that live theater may not be able to return until a year after the vaccine has been released. And so right now, that's what we're preparing for.
For now, these improv theaters are making it work digitally.
I know, the matching tattoo.
Another tool in the toolbox they'll use in the future.
When we do open up, we can sell both an in-person ticket to come to the theater or a digital ticket to watch online.
This is the world that you're living in, and so instead of looking at what it's not doing for you, how can you look at what it can do for you?
I'm Chloe Nordquist, reporting.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching and rocking with us during a very busy and historic week. I haven't known sleep like I'm gonna know it this weekend. I'll be rested and back for more In the Loop next week. Same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.
We take a step away from the noise and spin to really hear the stories that need to be told. Newsy cuts through.